Lucky you!
Best 36 holes in golf.
You tuned in to Alternate Shots Podcast,
Marnie's Army.
where we talk about golf,
Marquis, Sandy's.
poker,
Bond. James Bond.
horse racing,
I'm all in.
great movies.
Alfred Hitchcock.
We have no script.
And down the stretch they come.
We're glad you joined us.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
Whoop. Let's start again. Part 3, Bill Harmon. Bill, we're back. We're
Great.
looking at one of your favorite spots. It wasn't too far from where you spent some time.
Well, when I won the club championship, sounds funny. What was it, 50 some odd years ago? I was playing Bob Wilkie, who was
Good
an
play.
established player, much older than I. Of course, everybody was at the time. And in the morning, I shot 67 on the West Course.
Wow. Holy mackerel.
And
How
I
old were you?
think I was, so that was 67. I just turned 17. It would have been over on the 8th green, I guess,
The
Mhm.
massacre.
or on the 7th green. And I was 3 under par on the East Course on those holes. Yeah, I was holing everything and hitting it good. And, you know, back then I didn't know anything about the golf swing. And I felt if I could reach a green, I could knock it close. Now, if I can get a pitching wedge on the green, I'm happy.
Rule game.
So the game was, there was no fear involved. I didn't know what that word meant. When you get older and you realize how lucky you've been, and you start tracing why the heck did this happen. And I have to give Waikiki credit too. You know, we were there before we came over to Wingfoot, and Waikiki was great to the Harmons.
Do you think golf has to be played with 14 clubs?
I feel before they change the ball and all this stuff on distance, which I think should happen personally for the pros, I think the easiest thing to do to limit the number of clubs and make it 9 for the pros. And then let's see who can be the best player.
So a
But
driver,
what would they take? You know, what
a
club?
driver, a hybrid, and 7 wedges?
There you go. When I was at Wingfoot in 2020, the ball was running forever. The course actually played short, and only one guy broke par. But my first day, I was a spotter on 4 West. This sounds kind of crazy. I was on the right side of the fairway, and I never realized, looking back to the tee, how downhill that tee shot was. It never dawned on me when I was playing the hole, because it was always a driving a 4-iron or something.
Golf was at its highest point ever. Bobby Jones was at the peak of his career, and this was a sporting event that the whole world was paying attention to. His opening round, he ended up setting the course record, 69, first time he ever broke 70 in the U.S. Open. Second round, he shot a 75, and third round, a 71, sufficient for him to have a substantial lead, and it looked like he was going to walk in with the championship.
And these guys were hitting driving sand wedges to 4 West from 480 yards.
Unbelievable.
You know, they're hitting short irons to number 9, 600 yards. And only one guy broke par. And so, and I think 6 over might have been in the top 10, by the way. But that's a joke to hit a drive in a 9-iron to a 600-yard par 5, isn't it? That's not
Yeah.
right. I don't care how big you are and all that stuff. That's not golf. And I don't really enjoy watching pro golf today, because every hole is a drive and a wedge, and every par 5 is a drive and a 7-iron.
Right.
Except on a par 3. So I like watching I hate the course at Bay Hill, but I like the fact that it's hard and that guys have to make some pars coming in. You know, they actually have to perform and put the ball in the fairway and hit the green. I'm not blaming the players. The players are fantastic. They're really good. I just
Augusta
think
kind of stands up to
something's
them.
going wrong here. I don't know what it is, but the game shouldn't be this easy. But Payne was a winner. You know, there's an expression, at that level, golf swings don't win tournaments, people win tournaments. You know, and so he won 3 majors. You know, when he got into the hunt, he was a show-off, you know, by the way he dressed and everything. And show-offs usually do better. I had kind of quit caddying by the time he became real good. But we were playing with him at Abilene, the legit classic. So this is a story that comes to mind. And he drove it in the left rough on the 18th hole, and he had tree trouble. There weren't a lot of leaves. There were just these branches, and he kept taking these practice swings, and it really inhibited his backswing. And you guys play enough. Let's say there's a limb that makes you shorten your backswing 50%. You know, you take 20 practice swings and 20 practice swings, and when it finally comes to the ball, you hit the limb in your swing. You do it almost every single time.
Yeah.
He hit the limb in his swing, and it directed the club, and he whiffed it. And without missing a beat, he screamed as loud as he could, "Strike one!" And so I never forgot that.
When you're Paul Tesori, caddying for Webb Simpson or Cam Young, so this week you're in Texas at the Valero Open. Next week is the Masters.
Yeah.
How's that like? I mean, some of these guys have net jets. Do you get invited on the jet? Do you have to get to the place?
Well, there were
on
no
call?
net jets.
Right.
Net jets when I was out there. We just had Robin and I had our big Harmon recovery fundraiser last week, and at our little party the night before the golf, we had Julie Inkster, Jay, Billy Andrade, Tom Percher, and Joe Durant did a little Q&A. And Jay mentioned sarcastically that it was very difficult early on when he started playing the tour in the early 70s, when the jet showed up about 15 minutes late and the champagne wasn't quite chilled properly on the flight home after missing the cut. Of course, he was being sarcastic because it wasn't that way back when they started. And my question to them was, I always like to ask questions that they haven't heard before, because these guys have been playing, and Julie have been playing competitive golf 40, 50 years. And I asked them what their lowest point was when they knew that they weren't good enough anymore. Because they all go through it, by the way. We're talking about Justin Thomas, who, if he finishes 15th, we think he's had a bad week. Because they've all gone through it. And so it was very interesting listening to, in the middle of a slump, how down they got and everything. And so Julie Inkster's, she went first, and hers was fantastic. She talked about, she'd won 3 U.S. amateurs in a row, I believe. She was, but she was a mother. Back then, there were no daycare centers, and she was playing bad. And she said, just think of this. I was a bad mom, a bad wife, and a bad golfer all at the same time. Asking me if I ever got on a net jet from the Valero tournament. No, we drove through the night, unfortunately with some help probably. But back then that was kind of the fun of it to me. I look back on, I think we all look back on days in our lives when we had nothing, but we didn't know any different. So you just get it done. And so I look back in the caddy days when I started, we didn't make any money. Nobody really had any money, but we all took care of each other and we traveled together. And I thought it was the time of my life. I was having a great time. So when you work at nice clubs like I do, and you see people that supposedly have everything, and for my value system, some of them have nothing. They got houses and they got this, but they don't have happiness. So I don't look at, my gifts in life come wrapped in different packages, and they're not things, they're experiences and stuff. So I like listening to how it was before people got good or before they became successful, because everybody had to go through issues and problems and stuff. And Jay Haas's comment was interesting. He said, I never wanted to get comfortable. I wasn't good enough to be comfortable. I'd have an edge all the time. I'd always be striving because players are coming up that are probably better than me, and I got to ward them off. That's why I get a kick out of players say I get tired playing 3-4 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
I get it. That really gets me. But to your point, Bill, it is interesting what makes these new golfers tired. Bob Golby had a 3-year stretch where he played 39, 39, and 42 tournaments.
Wow.
And now if they play, well, God, I got to play these 3 FedEx Cups in a row, you know.
Right.
That's terrible for $25 million a tournament. God, that's hard. I've said this, that well before Live, not every Masters champion liked each other. And nothing ever came out of the dinners because they play with each other all the time. You know, when I caddied for Mike Gilmore the last round of the US Open in 2020, when he was a marker, he played with Abraham Ancher. And I thought Abraham Ancher was one of the coolest guys I ever met in my life. I loved him. Terrific guy. Unbelievably good guy. So just because he goes to Live, that's going to wipe out my memory of those 18 holes? No, doesn't. He's a good guy. My dad had this kind of figured out years ago. Everyone used to say Augusta was a hooker's course. And he said, yeah, but all the trouble's on the left. Demerit was a fader. He won 3. Nicklaus was a fader. He won 6, you know. So this notion that you have to hook the ball at Augusta, but almost every hole, jail is on the left, other than 18 that I can think of. I was working for Craig at Oak Hill, where Jeff is from. Rochester, New York is a phenomenal golf town, just incredible golf town. And Jeff wins a PGA in 1988, I think, at Oak Tree. And the phone is ringing off the hook because Craig was his teacher, his mentor, and everything. And the local sports writer said, boy, your life is going to change, Craig. And Craig said, no, my life isn't going to change one bit. Jeff Sluman's life is going to change. I've got a ladies' clinic tomorrow at 9 o'clock. This will have 0 effect on my life. The only effect on my life that it will have is I'll get to see Jeff Sluman's life improve. I thought that was a very, very, very cool way of looking at it. Craig wasn't teaching to make himself look good. He was teaching to change Jeff Sluman's life. So I have adopted that thing that teaching isn't about me, it's about the student. Through osmosis, it was transferred to us that, you know, you teach these players, and it's a great thrill to teach them. It's a privilege to teach them. And then, you know, when Dave Marr won the PGA.
Dave left college and turned pro. He found his way to New Jersey and discovered his calling at Winged Foot, where he learned under Claude Harmon. A portrait of those famed assistants and their mentor hangs in the golf shop today. He won 3 times in his first 2 years on tour, but really hit the trifecta in 1965. Dave captured a major, the PGA, competed on the Ryder Cup team, and was named Player of the Year. With that easygoing nature, the television cameras warmed to him immediately. Because more than anything else, throughout his life, Dave was always eager to help others. And just like with that meandering putt, in whatever he did, the Texan always seemed to find the bottom of the cup.
I was sitting in our den, not sure, maybe 65, is that when? And I remember my mother and father crying. As a kid, you don't really see your parents cry much, you know. I don't think he was crying because it made him look good. He cried because he got to participate in something pretty special, you know. Which is kind of unusual these days, because now we've got all the teachers are like Tarzan, you know, when their player plays good, they're right there. But when they miss 4 straight cuts, they don't seem to jump up in front of the cameras readily.
It's the one thing that you'll always want to be thinking about, your relationship with Winged Foot.
I think Winged Foot in this country has been the most influential club in the history of American golf because of its relationships with the golf pros, and it's a golf club. And all the people that Winged Foot has mentored, all these young kids that come and go on to be great pros at every other club in the country, and then they branch out from there. I believe Winged Foot has changed the course of golf more than any club in America. When you look at the pros that they've had, assistant pros, and gone on to be great pros and great players all over the place. And I remember when I was there last time asking some of the pros, how often do you play? They go, oh, 3-4 times a week. I don't play 3 or 4 times a season, you know. And so another little feather in your cap, you know, Katie PGA Merchandiser of the Year. She came there as a 22-year-old intern, right? Now she's a PGA
she's terrific.
Merchandiser of the Year. That says a lot for the club. My brother Dick was working with Lanny Watkins, and my dad was at Lochinvar where Butch was. And Lochinvar in Houston is very close to the airport. So Lanny flew down, Dick picked him up, and Lochinvar is maybe 10 minutes away. So they went to work at Lochinvar, but Dad was watching Dick give Lanny a lesson. And Dick said it was the most nervous he's ever been, because usually it was we were watching Dad give a good player lesson. And he said Dad sat there for 2 or 3 hours, never said a word, which he thought was nice. And Lanny, when you watched him in person, was unusually good. He wasn't just good, he was unusually good. His ball striking capabilities were really, really very, very impressive. And he had a great session. And they went in for lunch, and Lanny turned, my dad turned to Lanny and he said, you know, I only have 2 things to tell you. And Lanny kind of perked up and he said, first thing I do is make sure I get my clubs and myself to the tee on time. And the second thing I would do is I'd change my route to the bank every Monday so you don't get robbed. But what I'm really curious about is, why are you taking lessons from Dick? He said, because your ball comes out like it's delivered from a Remington rifle, and Dick's ball comes out like it's delivered by a seed gun going 360 degrees all over the course. So it took Dad about 3 hours to get the harpoon into Dick after he buttered Lanny up. But his point was, he wouldn't have changed anything with Lanny Watkins' swing, even though it had a lot of individual characteristics, very low hands, incredibly fast tempo. If you ever look at Lanny's swing in slow motion, go to YouTube, very odd impact position with his left arm bent and his left wrist cupped, a little bit like Lee Westwood. These were all things that Dad probably would not have looked at in a model swing, but Dad looked at the ball, and the ball liked Lanny's swing, so he wouldn't have changed anything. Wing foot has influenced golf, not modern day golf the way it is now, because clubs are different, and I get all that. I work at one that's different. But wing foot has had more influence on the real golfers, in my opinion, than any club I've ever been around. Nothing's even close to it.
Why are you laughing?
Well, at least we have the laugh to add at the end.
Right. We've gone from 12 handicaps at this to 19 handicaps in just a week.
That's what happened. Somebody changed my grip, and the next thing you know, I can't do the podcast anymore. I felt like I was in the first row of the first pew at church, right during the sermon.
And your brother was poking you.
My brother was making me laugh.
Thanks for joining us
Casper.
today.
Billy
We
Harmon,
really appreciate your
Double
feedback.
Indemnity,
And please
Arky,
subscribe to the
Two
show.
Router,
Hit them
Odd
hard
Job.
and hit them off.
Best 36 holes.